Andrew in Malaysia, you're live with Eric and V. What would you like to talk about?
Hello, yeah.
Hi.
I want to talk about the standard of evidence because I'm sure you will agree that there isn't an objective standard of evidence, right?
Yeah, we want an objective standard of evidence.
Yeah, but there really isn't, right? No matter where. And I do believe that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, but
Why?
since that there isn't the existence of an objective standard of evidence, how do we go about saying that this is extraordinary? You can say that, okay, it is disconnected with reality, but to what extent is it disconnected and exactly what is the standard of evidence that is required? And the next question would be, what's the standard of evidence that's required for you guys to believe in God? Exactly what is it?
Sure, absolutely. So I can answer the second part, mostly because I've lost track a bit of the first. If you want to give us the first part of that again, I'd be happy to listen, but I can answer the second if you prefer.
Yeah, you can answer the second one first.
Okay. So I like that this seems to be the theme of today.
Yeah.
Right. What would it take for you to believe in a God?
Which is the theme of the show. So
Yeah.
we're good. On point.
I like particularly because it seems like a lot of our shows are us asking other people, what do we believe and why?
Mm-hmm.
And I've actually seen, people who were disgruntled or upset after calling it a talk heathen saying, well, we're having to defend and explain our worldview. They're not doing it about themselves. So Andrew, people like you and the other callers today are asking us to put our money where our mouth is and talk about standards of evidence. So I like that. That said, let's dive into it. What standards of evidence do we have? I think I answered a lot of that in the prior calls. And that is that if it is real, I would like you to show it, right? I think that if you could show naturalistically, hey, resurrecting from the dead is possible. Okay, how does it work? Oh, here's the method of resurrection. Okay, once I understand and we can show and test and go, okay, resurrection is possible like this. Then I can look at the Bible, story of resurrection and go, okay, resurrection actually is a possibility here. Now, how probable is it that is what happened, right? But if you can't get to the first part, then how can we possibly do the second? And I think that's true for all magic and miracle claims, all of the extraordinary claims that are made in the Bible. When people are talking about them needing extraordinary evidence, at least for me, that's what that means. You need to show me the method of those things happening, right? I like. Do you believe that God created the universe, Andrew?
Yeah, I do believe that.
Cool. If you were to show me how universes are created, and we were to go, okay, let's create a couple of universes and see what's different. Let's test a couple of things. Okay, now what matches up with our universe? Well, this. Okay, so now we know that it's possible. Is it probable? Okay, well, let's take a look and see if, there's evidence in that direction. I think that's a reasonable ask.
We can't possibly know whether who created the universe, to be completely honest.
Well, here's the thing, is I don't think you would make that claim if you could actually prove it. Saying you can't is not evidence for you. It's not evidence for us. If anything, it just shows that you're making an unfalsifiable claim.
Yeah, I think no, as in, I think that we can't really know. And to say that a God exists, yes, is not very plausible because back then, that's when math breaks down and wherever science breaks down. So we can't really test whether a God exists and whether a timeless or immaterial being would exist. But still, because back to my question, that no matter what claim it is, right, you said you need a testable method that can show us whether whatever the claim wants to justify is true. But the thing is, if you want to think about, let's just say Jesus, maybe it's not something like resurrection, but the idea of let's say Jesus protecting us, right? how much evidence? What exactly would it take? Would it take that like consistent miracles to happen 10 times or 20 times, or is there a specific number that you would say?
Well, yeah. Okay, I can answer that for you, Andrew. So, let's make a claim about prayer and prayer working to help heal people faster from various diseases. If people are praying for you, you will heal faster. We've actually done quite a number of studies on this topic, double-blind kind of stuff. So actual good studies on whether or not prayer works. And what we're looking for in that case is statistical evidence that the people who were prayed for, whether they knew it or not, got better quicker. If that were borne out, then we would have something to talk about, right? We might not jump directly to, well, God did it, but we would say, okay, it seems clear that if people pray for somebody who is sick and that person gets better on average 30% faster than someone who isn't prayed for, that's a valid thing to have a conversation about. And then we start looking into reasons why that could be. And then there's a whole list of possibilities. But it turns out that that's not the case. It turns out that these studies have not shown that people who are prayed for get better faster. In fact, it does. There have been several indications that if someone knows they're being prayed for, it actually increases the amount of time it takes them to get better because they start stressing out about whether or not they should get better quicker. Yeah. So we do have studies about some of these things. We do have statistical data, not about whether or not God exists, but about some of the assumptions that we would make about the world if he did in fact exist in the way that people say. And it hasn't been borne out yet. But all that to say, I would say that if you showed me a body of studies, a meta study of different surveys and analyses that proved to me that if you prayed, you got better quicker, I would then come to you and say, hey, this seems reasonable. This seems like a reasonable claim to make based on statistical data. So now what? Now where do we go with this conversation?
Let's investigate.
Right.
Yeah. Thinking about it, I'm kind of in the middle. I think that right now it's more towards faith than reason to believe in any sort of God. Right?
Well, actually, that's a great question, Andrew. Is you're saying that you should be having faith to believe in God. Why? Where do you use faith elsewhere in your life? Because I think faith is a useless tool.
Yeah, I think that yes, faith is actually very useless. It's a reason. It's something that someone gives when they don't have a good reason. And I do admit that I do not have a good reason for it. But the thing, what I'm wondering is, what is the goal that we are trying to reach to say that, okay, now we are justified in moving from faith to reason, right? Because you talk about the miracles and there's not even studies, but exactly what number of miracles must happen consistently for that to be enough? Do we have an idea on that?
Yeah, I think that, and I'll let Eric jump in a minute, but I think I see where you're coming from. And I think that this stems from a very common flip that a lot of people do, which is things are true until they're proven false, right? So we can say that I'm going to go through the world and believe things on faith until someone gives me enough reason to doubt it and disbelieve it. But I think that can get you into a lot of trouble really quickly.
That's not where I'm coming from. No, I think that the default position is non-belief, and only when there's evidence, then you should believe. So that's why faith can justify anything, right? But
I agree with that.
So Andrew,
what I really want to know, hypothetically, how many miracles must it take that happen consistently? Exactly what's the number that it will justify our belief?
So
in God.
I think that V just clearly summed that up. It all depends, man. It all depends. And I'll tell you why it depends. Because you're talking about a medical treatment. And we want to make sure that medical treatments work. We don't give people just random pills and hope that it works, or check to see. No, we show that it works before we start prescribing them. So you would definitely want to, at least for medical claims, at least make it hit the same standard that current medicines have to hit. I think that's reasonable. Usually that requires at least a decade of double-blind tests, research, and I mean, just there are lots of steps there, and I think that's reasonable because we expect that much from everything else that we use for medicine. The question that I wanted to ask you, Andrew, is you said the time to believe something is when there's evidence. So what evidence have you evaluated that led you to your God belief?
There isn't. I do admit that it's on faith, which is the opposite, and is incompatible with reason. So I don't really have that reason to believe in it.
That sounds like a very uncomfortable place to be mentally, Andrew. It sounds like you must have a lot of cognitive dissonance going on right now. If you
and cheers to you, by the way, for being honest about it, because most people aren't.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've kind of stumped me a little bit, because usually we have to get people to the point where they acknowledge that they aren't using reason to come to their beliefs. It seems like you're already there. So I guess my question is, why are you staying right here? It seems like you're kind of on a knife's edge right now, because you've realized this is not reason that is keeping me with these beliefs. This is faith. So why not let go of that belief if you can see that there are no reasonable steps to get there? What's holding you there?
Because, like I said, okay, let's just say hypothetically, I don't know, someone really resurrected, and then on the body it says it etches with the name Jesus. Would you guys believe in it? Because talking about there's no objective standard of evidence, so I don't really know what's the goal for us to really believe in something. If you talk about God, like what is it that will let us finally say, okay, here we go, this is the supernatural?
Okay, so you're looking.
But it's all
Yeah. And I think that we touched on this with the prayer studies, but also I think that we do need to clarify. We live in a society that, because of rampant colonization and dominionism, has a very particular view of God and what constitutes the supernatural. And if a supernatural thing happens, then it can only be this God. But part of deconverting and part of broadening the possibilities in your own mind is realizing that if there were miracles that happened on a regular basis, that everybody agreed were happening, that would only ever prove that miracles happen. That doesn't prove necessarily that a specific God is responsible for them. So your example of maybe saying the name of Jesus over a dead person, or maybe somebody who is quote unquote possessed, and then they get better. They got better. That might prove that Jesus did something or that God did something, but that might also prove that that person just needed to hear a voice in that moment, and then they did, and it was fine. Or maybe the intonation of that particular word and the way it's structured pierced some kind of space-time barrier, and with its resonant frequencies, did stuff. There are a whole bunch of different there are a whole different. Your reaction weirded me out just now. My point here is that there are a whole host of different reasons that something miraculous might happen. And so even acknowledging that miracles happen on a regular basis is not enough for me to prove any particular God. Now, if you're going to ask what would prove a particular God, that would be less about miracles or prayer working and more about some kind of, I don't even know what would prove a particular God to me.
I think you need to find a claim that is very unique to that specific deity.
Right. If for example, let's use Sam as an example. If things only ever worked when you prayed to Hermes or interacted with Hermes in some way.
But if you prayed to Allah, if you prayed to...
if no one else had mystical experiences except for people who were Hellenistic, Grecian pagans, then maybe we would have something to start moving us in a direction. But the very fact that people of all faiths, people of no faith, have experiences that could be considered quote unquote mystical all the time doesn't lend us any direction. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but so if miracles happen consistently, you would believe in the supernatural realm, and you just believe that there's something out there that is watching over us. Is it that miracles exist, or something that we can never ever?
Not really. I think that if you're specifically talking about miracle claims, I think people would just walk away being like, hey, the secret is true.
Right. Which is, yeah, again, like, as I said with a previous caller, sufficiently advanced science is indistinguishable from magic. So it could very easily be that we are engaging in a completely naturalistic process that has some kind of naturalistic benefit that we just aren't aware of yet. It's the reason I say people can continue to pray after they deconvert, as long as they're not praying to a god. If it's more of a meditative thing, it's proof that meditation helps. It's not a supernatural thing. It's a purely natural phenomenon. But yeah, I think that we could agree that weird shit happens, but I think that's as far as we would be able to go without actually ruling out any possible scientific explanation, which is impossible to do right now because we are constantly learning more and more about science.
Yeah, that's true, because I mean, back at that time when we didn't know about sleep paralysis, we would think that it is
exactly
demon that was possessing us, that was paralyzing us. But after that, whatever that we perceive as a supernatural just was all along in the natural realm. So that's why I am just confused as to what precisely is it. Then we can confirm the existence of a supernatural realm. That's the thing. I don't really know, because we will always something supernatural that occurs.
Hopefully, what we answered will help.
Yeah, something that is supernatural that occurs will be most likely by inductive reasoning. We are waiting for that natural explanation. But I'm just wondering, what precise evidence do we need? Then we will say that the supernatural exists. What is that? Or do we need
just show it?
Start down. Yeah.
I don't think that it's a light that you flip on and flip off. I think that everything that we understand and believe about the world has a degree to it. So to what degree do I believe X? Right. And I make sure that that is corresponding to the amount of evidence that I have. So, I believe that if I drop something, it'll fall to the ground. Am I 100% certain? No, I've got to go with 99.999999999. But
yeah.
So
there's no absolute.
Yeah. So if you were to start showing those supernatural things regularly, and we were able to start predicting them and start being able to, discover its process, then yeah, over time, my confidence level in that claim will start to go up.
Yeah. Okay. So when you say that, when you show those supernatural things that occur, but what is supernatural? Supernatural is just not natural, but it's not.
Andrew.
Supernatural is not natural, but it's not a definition in itself.
Hey.
Which is what I'm confused with.
While that would be a fantastic call, we're starting to get far afield of the reason why you called in. You're welcome to call back in again, but we want to make sure that we have time for other callers as well.
Yeah. For what it's worth, I think you're asking all the right kinds of questions, right? You're asking some good stuff. And I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts are after a couple of weeks of maybe puzzling through this and coming back maybe with a good definition of what supernatural is.
Yeah.
And then we can talk about that.
Sound good?
Yeah. Okay. Right. Yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.